the first thing that came across my mind is, why is this guy running against Trump as Trump is being indicted? And then I started to dig a little deeper on, Twitter, and I came across some passages from your book. And I don't know which book it is. It's one of the two, but it talks about January 6th, and it says, it was a dark day for democracy. The loser of the last election refused to concede the race, claimed the election was stolen, raised hundreds of millions of dollars from loyal supporters, and is considering running for executive office. I'm referring, of course, to Donald Trump. Do you think that the 2020 election was fair? Do you think that Joe Biden got the most votes in American history, or do you think 2020 was rigged?
So I'll answer that. I think 2020 was rigged specifically by big tech, but I just want to say something at the outset, because this is the first time we're meeting, is that I've actually been a longtime fan and of your tweets particularly. And I understand that I did a little bit come out of nowhere, right? I was in the business world. I had no public footprint at all until 2020, and then really 2021 when I stepped down from my job as a CEO. So I invite the scrutiny. Some of it's bad faith, but then I take someone like you, and I understand your heart is actually in this for the country as opposed to some of the other trolls. And so that's why I'm engaging with this directly. So let me be really clear about something. I've written 3 books in the last 18 months. That passage has now been floating around Twitter. I'd encourage you to read the book, or at least even the chapter that came from. Those lines were tongue-in-cheek, in part because those were the opening words of the chapter. It was a dark day for democracy. The winner refused to concede the election, raised hundreds of millions of dollars. Those exact words. I'm referring to, of course, Stacey Abrams. That was literally the opening paragraph of that chapter. And it turned out that those words were literally borrowed from a description of somebody else criticizing Donald Trump that I then cut and pasted. So look, I have detailed messaging on all of this, but you read that chapter and you read that book, it's easy for someone to airlift something out of Nation of Victims without reading the whole book. It was literally a satirical chapter that started with those words that someone had used against Donald Trump, with Stacey Abrams as the punchline. And here's the thing about the books I've written. I wasn't writing them with any intention of running for president, right? And so otherwise you'd read them and can this be misquoted? No, these are, if I may say so myself, I would say intellectual books. These are not candidate books, okay? These are books that were written in part of a career, 3 books in 20 months. Candace, and probably you, I don't know if you've written books as well, understand what it takes to write one. I've written 3 and they're not candidate books, are deeply introspective books. So much so that actually even some of the things that I said in Woke Inc., I've moved a little bit from today. What did I say in that book, and I stand by it today? 2 things that I think are really important points. The 2020 election was stolen principally by big tech. The Google search algorithms that suppressed actual stories that you could have read on Donald Trump. Hunter Biden laptop story, suppressed on the eve of an election. There's definitive data showing that actually would have changed the outcome of the election. I personally find that data, just like in terms of the raw numbers, even stronger than the data that's yet been presented on ballot fraud, though I think both existed. I've been very clear about where I stand on ballot fraud. Single day voting, election day as holiday, has to be paper ballots. And by the way, government issued ID matching the voter file. But I think what's more important to understand as well, and I talk about this in this book, is 2016 was actually even the other election that was stolen from Donald Trump, the election that he supposedly won, where he wasn't allowed to govern for those 4 years. And so the only thing I would say is there will be a lot of things that you and I may have slightly different points of view on. I think this will exist. But all I'll ask is, I know you're an intellectual as well. You're a guy who cares about the country. Read the books, not some sort of screenshot from Twitter of a purposefully airlifted passage. And about January 6th, what Candace mentioned, and I saw this in one of your tweets too, and I just want to address this, Rogan, just so you're aware. Somebody floated a passage where I said what Trump did that day was reprehensible on January 6th. I said this shortly thereafter. And again, that's another airlift. Read what it was. That wasn't a tweet from me. That was a reply to somebody else's tweet in response to a Wall Street Journal piece that I wrote 2 days after January 6th, or in the days after January 6th. I wrote a piece in the Wall Street Journal that said that censorship, systematic censorship in this country, was the cause of January 6th. And in particular, it was government using tech companies to silence speech. And I said that that would be a friendly parley compared to what's to come. Somebody then asked me, do you excuse what Donald Trump did on that day? And I wanted to be clear, and it's something I'm saying today too, is that no, I would not have handled January 6th in the same way as Donald Trump. And that's a fact. And maybe you and I can disagree on that. I said it then, I stand by it today. But just like I said in the days after January 6th, which caused multiple advisors to my company to resign, which caused me to face great personal cost in the seat that I was in as a biotech CEO, that's the same thing I'm saying today. And so that's a long way of saying we may still have our disagreements, but I'd love to have those disagreements with the full context of what I've said rather than airlifting passages. I'm not accusing you of doing that, but that's what I've seen circulating a lot. And let's have real disagreements instead of fake ones. That's all I would say.